Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, the board of directors, the many executives over there are really just scrambling right now to just get past this movie and call it quits and just move on to other projects.
Rachel Zegler was given the chance of a lifetime with a $200 million project from Disney, but she definitely blew it because by the end she was being torched by the company.
After the disastrous reaction of their live-action Snow White remake, Rachel Zegler is now claiming that the Walt Disney Company essentially barred her from any further Hollywood projects. The actress recently learned of internal conversations that implied Disney executives not only placed the blame for the movie's failure on her public statements, but also planned secret actions to prevent her from participating in high-profile projects.
How do you get that? I'm like, every single white male is a piece of shit and the woman is the hero and all authority is bad and all business is bad, but government is good as so. And most people don't know what they're watching. She, unfortunately, sort of pulled the curtain back and people knew exactly what was going on.
This most recent revelation represents a significant uptick in the ongoing tale of accusations, threats of legal action, and broken trust. It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important points that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders. It serves as a reminder that Hollywood relationships can quickly degenerate into animosity, particularly when exposed to the intense scrutiny of social media and industry rumors.
Yes, Truman.
Yeah, I have a clip of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Her being a retard.
Okay.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That
is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can.
When the live-action Snow White, which was supposed to be a dazzling remake of the 1937 animated classic, failed both critically and economically, tensions began to arise. Fan complaints about the seeming absence of whimsy and nostalgia in video that seemed laser-focused on modern social messages and the early previews had already raised concerns. Upon the film's eventual release, many viewers and reviewers bemoaned the loss of the whimsical charm that defined the first one.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
Their own online tempest was sparked by Zegler remarks made during press junkets, in which she described the prince as eerie and declared the classic romance to be out of date. Suddenly, she was the de facto scapegoat for a whole movie's alleged disregard for old Disney customs, rather than a positive voice for new interpretations. It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders.
She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
Bitch!
The
Our
right to buy
reproductive
Cosby
rights.
sweaters?
Come on.
Because of the face
Go
of a
vote blue.
serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
Demonstrating the precariousness of a developing career when a project that appeared to be a surefire success fails. Following the movie's poor box office performance and unfavorable reviews, Disney execs reportedly thought of several ways to save what was quickly turning into a PR nightmare. In an attempt to quietly bury Snow White and move on to other projects, some higher-ups first proposed rerouting marketing funds to support streaming releases.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
So we didn't do that this time.
However, the narrative became antagonistic as fan and shareholder outrage increased. High-ranking insiders started citing Zegler's social media posts and interviews, arguing that her contemptuous attitude toward the 1937 original masterwork had turned off key viewers. Although the studio denied any direct responsibility in public, sources claimed that in private, certain officials talked about how to exclude Zegler from future positions at Disney and its affiliate companies.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and highlights important elements that speak to the way this issue affects both the audience and stakeholders. It also emphasizes how quickly a well-liked character may be turned into a liability when business earnings and brand identity are threatened. Though her part in the debate seemed more subdued, Gal Gadot, the movie's second big star, was not immune to criticism. At first, her portrayal of the evil queen was praised as a brilliant one.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
She mostly avoided commenting on the raging arguments, opting instead for a low-key marketing strategy that put Zegler at the center of questions from the media. Disney insiders quickly realized that Godot had avoided the hate speech aimed at her co-star, even though she also starred in the doomed movie. Zegler candor on Snow White's modernizing themes, on the other hand, provided an obvious target for the annoyances of angry viewers.
And so it was like
Those people.
very much this, yes.
Yeah, the people that we need to educate, the people that we need to love into awareness.
Drawn them in the right direction.
Rumor had it that Disney's legal department was planning a case against Zegler to recoup damages for reputational harm by the time the film's startling underperformance was totaled. This relationship stoked more rumors that the actress was being exploited as a convenient scapegoat for a project that was full of mistakes.
Yeah. Everyone is serving it's just her going, we need to no, you don't. It's not your job. Your job is to entertain. You are paid to entertain. That's what this is. Also, it's very disturbing.
It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important points that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders. It draws attention to possible disparities in the way studios handle stars, particularly in a project that many thought was doomed due to top-down errors rather than a performer's interview style.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
According to some close to Zegler, Disney's dissatisfaction had evolved into an active blacklist. However, in contemporary Hollywood parlance, a blacklist usually refers to unofficial bans or do not hire lists that are secretly passed about among casting directors and producers. The practice can be disastrous for an actor's chances, even though it is rarely mentioned on the record.
And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible.
These fresh claims claim that Zegler learned of her alleged persona non grata status when potential collaborators suddenly stopped answering her phone, and ongoing talks for many TV and movie roles inexplicably fell through at the last minute. Production insiders reportedly revealed that Disney executives had expressed dissatisfaction of her involvement in at least 2 of those cases, threatening to withhold support or distribution deals if she were involved in those projects.
In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
The extent to which one of the largest entertainment companies may show off its power behind the scenes is also revealed, along with the wider ramifications and important points that connect with how this issue affects stakeholders and the audience alike. When asked for reaction, Disney officials merely provided a canned statement that alluded to rumors and conjecture regarding internal procedures while rejecting claims of an active blacklist as unfounded.
It basically, this movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism.
However, rumors kept spreading. Disney has a huge influence on what kinds of stories and talent are approved because it owns a huge media empire that includes theme parks, television networks, streaming services, and movie franchises, according to some analysts. Executives would not even need to give clear instructions if they were in fact subtly signaling that Zegler was prohibited.
So from the casting to the class politics, the sexual politics, the regime politics, everything about it was liberal.
Many smaller companies may be discouraged from taking the chance of working with an actor who is at odds with the entertainment behemoth due to the fear of destroying their connection with Disney. It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders, serving as a reminder that corporate influence may go well beyond the confines of a single movie.
Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, nope, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
Zegler was unreserved in her remarks during a live social media Q&A, which was her first significant public appearance following the reports. She made it clear that she felt deceived by a firm that had hailed her as a breakout artist and an advocate for diversity, only to turn against her as soon as a scandal erupted. Although she refrained from identifying particular Disney officials,
it's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
She made reference to influential persons who, if they so chose, might prevent me from landing another acting role. She continued by talking about the disappointment of reading what she called dishonest leaks that blame her for the entire Snow White disaster and the stress of watching once promising parts go without explanation. Her disclosures also draw attention to the issue's wider ramifications and emphasize important ideas that speak to the audience and stakeholders alike.
It is not racist to suggest that a character who is described in the original as skin white as snow, that is literally how the character is described in the original, that's a character description in the same way that, as you mentioned, in Moana.
Highlighting the fact that when a production goes awry and the blame game starts, the relationship between the star and the studio can change significantly. Given the severity of the purported blacklist, emotions must have escalated to a breaking point behind the scenes. After a series of urgent meetings during which the studio examined her contractual duties to preserve and safeguard the Disney legacy, sources claimed that Zegler was already at war with Disney's legal staff. The actress countered that she was just repeating the commercial angle that Disney had established.
And so this bizarre fixation with race shifting everything, but only in one direction by Disney, obviously is quite strange.
They placed more emphasis on Snow White's contemporary empowerment than the passive fairy tale romance of the past. Zegler believed that the studio's decision to have her promote progressive improvements while then claiming her comments were harmful was contradictory and possibly dishonest. Some speculate that if the talks had gone awry, the studio might have taken a completely different course and subtly discouraged future partnerships with Zegler in order to reduce financial risks.
So I want to get to the structural politics of it, because obviously this is a big thing for Rachel Zegler, the star of the film. It was a big thing for all the left-wingers who made the movie. We have this clip that I want to play for you of Rachel Zegler talking about the love story in Snow White and how it has changed. There is Rachel Zegler talking about this.
The original cartoon came out in 1937 and
restore the reputation of the brand. It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders, illustrating the unsettling junction where marketing guidelines, legal requirements, and individual responsibility can all come together. Hollywood insiders who are following the situation provide a range of viewpoints. Some contend that Disney would also suffer if Zegler was actually placed on a blacklist. The actress is still well liked by younger audiences. Her social media following and past achievements are valuable assets. Fans may unintentionally react negatively if she is blackballed because they believe it is a corporate smear campaign. Others contend that Disney can tolerate bad press if it means maintaining its overall reputation because of its nearly infinite resources and collection of profitable franchises.
There is a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
From that perspective, the Snow White disaster serves as a sobering warning that even the most recognizable IP can fail if they alienate the fan base, and the studio will make every effort to prevent the disaster from tainting any upcoming sequels or remakes. This draws attention to the issue's wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the audience and stakeholders equally. It serves as a reminder that brand management is still crucial, even at the expense of a once adored fresh talent. In the meantime, Zegler accusations have generated intense, to put it mildly, social media discussion. Some individuals have voiced their support for Disney, criticizing the company for ignoring a talented actress in order to avoid taking responsibility for a poorly executed remake. They cite earlier remarks made by Disney's own creative leaders, who supported the daring reworking of the classic and presumably agreed with Zegler remarks. However, after publicly criticizing elements of a well-liked children's movie that influenced many generations, Zegler is accused of playing victim by his detractors. They believe that she effectively blacklisted herself with remarks they consider derogatory to the source material rather than whether Disney blacklisted her.
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yeah. This illustrates the delicate tightrope stars walk between creative reinterpretation and fan nostalgia, as well as the wider ramifications, and highlights important elements that speak to how this issue affects stakeholders and the audience equally. In the midst of this chaos, there is conjecture that Zegler may take legal action if she finds concrete evidence of blacklisting, such as email trails, first-hand accounts from the gatekeepers in the business, or other records. Although it would be extremely difficult to win a blacklist case against a company as powerful as Disney, any legal action could reveal internal correspondence that the entertainment behemoth might like to keep private. Furthermore, if the discovery process reveals systematic maneuvers intended to blame Zegler, it may be enough to win over the public's compassion. Conversely, Disney might redouble their efforts, claiming they had every right to cut ties with a performer they felt deliberately damaged their reputation. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important points that speak to the way this issue affects both stakeholders and the general public. It demonstrates how high-stakes conflicts between stars and studios have the power to change the course of everyone's careers, and possibly even how Hollywood handles controversies going forward.
One of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
In the background, Disney's live-action remake plan has been the subject of a wave of reflection following the Snow White disaster. These reimaginings, which were formerly thought to be flawless, have begun to show signs of weakness. Critics have accused the company of becoming complacent because they believe that sentimental attachment would cover up even the most dubious artistic choices. The studio took a big risk by sensationally rewriting Snow White, perhaps Disney's most famous fairy tale, and combining those changes with the marketing that promoted a modern angle. Analysts point to a list of disappointing or completely unsuccessful reboots, ranging from lesser-known titles to marquee properties, and conclude that the core magic that once defined Disney may be in jeopardy. If the alleged blacklist against Zegler is accurate, it suggests that Disney feels the cast's communication of the production decisions was the main source of failure rather than the production itself. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders.
They replace the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince. He's a criminal. And I think this plays first into the class politics of the left, which hates even the very idea of aristocracy or nobility.
Indicating a wider cultural divide over how far contemporary advancements can go before cherished traditions are lost. Even some critics, however, acknowledge that Snow White encountered several challenges that went beyond Zegler remarks. Longtime fans were perplexed by the manner the dwarfs, who historically played a significant role in the story's appeal, were reduced or recast. A key component of the original, the romantic plot, was reframed as a problematic artifact. The picture struggled to bring these various components together into a cohesive image, especially when combined with overbearing moral messages that overwhelmed the enchantment of fairy tales. In that way, blacklisting Zegler, if that is the case, feels like a form of punishment for a systematic failure. After all, before the camera started rolling, the final cut, script changes, and directing had to go through several levels of Disney approval. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important points that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders. It shows that big studios frequently function under a maze of decision makers whose competing interests can produce disastrous outcomes that greatly outweigh the influence of any one actor. In interviews conducted prior to the movie's premiere, Zegler seemed sincerely excited about giving a character a contemporary voice. She frequently talked enthusiastically about empowering young audiences to view Snow White as a strong female character. Ironically, some fans believe that this particular zeal had devolved into openly disparaging the original. The actress has since become more circumspect in her public appearances due to claims that Disney exploited her remarks as justification to exclude her from the mainstream of Hollywood. She has made references to writing a book or personal expose about her experiences, but it is unclear if that project will ever be completed if Disney's legal opposition becomes more serious. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way stakeholders are affected by this problem, providing a warning about how quickly the collaboration between star and studio may turn into hostility when a well-publicized remake fails. Gal Gadot, on the other hand, has avoided discussing any behind-the-scenes politics and has remained remarkably silent on Zegler blacklist allegations. Gadot's professional chances after Snow White appear to be significantly unaffected. According to observers, action and superhero movie franchises still want her. It is unclear if this discrepancy results from a separate contractual arrangement with Disney or from Godot's more cautious diplomacy. Zegler claims that the full power of a multimedia behemoth has been used against her, and she is now struggling to maintain her career. This also draws attention to the wider ramifications and highlights important elements that speak to the way this issue affects both the public and stakeholders. It emphasizes how, in Hollywood's intricate ecosystem, various talents may experience quite different outcomes from the same common topic. Whether Disney's perceived retaliation sets a worrying precedent is the industry's larger question. Will performers in the future feel under pressure to make sterile press releases out of concern for upsetting influential studios? Could this incident suppress the progressive reimagining of ancient stories and impede legitimate creative criticism? On the other hand, by removing classic story components, could it restrain a wave of contemporary revisions that some claim have gone too far? Snow White was revolutionary in its day, adamantly presenting the full-length animated feature to a skeptic audience. As film historians note, there are serious concerns about how nostalgia and contemporary ideals may coexist on the same site, given that the 2023 version falls short of recapturing that innovative energy, and the audience highlighting the precarious balance between the desire for modern relevance and brand heritage. Amid the chaos, Zegler has received a tidal wave of support on social media, with Twitter threads and petitions abounding, hashtags calling on Disney to own up to its own creative errors and stop using an actress as a scapegoat when, by many accounts, she was simply following the official promotional language, claiming that Disney uses its massive corporate power to stifle criticism. Citing her apparent indifference to fans' ties to the 1937 original, critics respond that Zegler is just reaping what she sowed. It is unclear if the boycott effort will gain enough traction to influence business executives. However, the impasse highlights a new chapter in fan-studio relations, one in which angry communities can use social media as a weapon to hold entertainment titans accountable. In the digital age, no studio is immune to public backlash if fans feel betrayed. It also emphasizes the wider ramifications and highlights important elements that speak to how this issue affects both stakeholders and the audience. In the end, the issue still stands. Will Rachel Zegler be able to get off what she refers to as an unofficial blacklist, or will corporate pressure cause her once bright Hollywood star to fade? A lot depends on her ability to build relationships with producers who are prepared to take a chance on her talent in spite of possible Disney opposition. Some up-and-coming filmmakers who are renowned for their independence might see her predicament as a compelling cause and a chance to defend artistic freedom against corporate power. On the other hand, Zegler might be out for years, and her career would be permanently halted if the alleged ban actually applies to big companies who control the distribution and marketing channels. Emphasizing the harsh realities of a business where a conflict between commercial interests and brand guardianship can quickly crush personal dreams, this also draws attention to the issue's wider ramifications and highlights important points that resonate with stakeholders and the audience alike. The Snow White remake will always be remembered as one of the greatest cautionary tales in film history. The dispute has overtaken any creative goals the picture originally had, regardless of whether it is remembered more for its radical narrative diversions, its divisive marketing campaign, or the alleged blacklisting of its lead actress. In the court of public opinion, the blame keeps shifting between fan nostalgia, faulty business initiatives, and the complex role that star commentary plays in determining a film's fate. The consequences of this disaster are still very much present for Rachel Zegler. If her accusations are true, Hollywood's vow of silence may be put to the test, as potential legal issues could expose the dark side of corporate retaliation. It also draws attention to the wider ramifications and emphasizes important ideas that speak to the way this problem affects both the audience and stakeholders, implying that even at a time of purported inclusivity and openness, who gets to prosper in Tinseltown might still be decided by unseen forces. Everyone is watching to see what Zegler does next. Will she make public proof of Disney's covert orders, or paperwork demonstrating that the studio deliberately worked to prevent her from getting new roles? If she discloses internal correspondence, would Disney expose herself to more scrutiny and sue her for violating non-disclosure agreements? Meanwhile, what will viewers think if they find out that the movie's heroine was essentially silenced and shunned by the same company that made her the new face of Disney Magic? No matter how these questions are ultimately resolved, the entire experience it serves as a turning point and a warning that it may take a very little time to go from a beloved fairy tale and the billions of dollars associated with its heritage to an industry outcast. One thing is certain throughout it all: the distinction between victim and villain may be blurred quite quickly in a world where delusions and financial gain prevail, leading viewers to question whether the true poison apple in the story was given behind executive doors instead of on the big screen.